Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new episode of Life That Said Yes Conversations. And today our guest is Abigail Rose Clarke. Abigail Rose Clarke is an author, somatic educator, writer, and artist. She is the creator of the embodied life method and the grow growl framework, which she has been teaching throughout the United States and internationally since 2014. The embodied life method aims to help people return to their bodies to find ease and comfort, even when life is difficult and the changes are extreme and fast approaching. The Grow Growl framework has been taught throughout the US and Canada, helping people navigate conflict in ways that transcend the models of domination and control many of us have been taught. Hello, Abigail.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for accepting and finding time. I always like to start by setting ground and asking my guests where are they situated at the moment and what are their surroundings and how is nature speaking at the moment and informing your being.
Well, I am in the small town in Western Massachusetts where I grew up. We're having the first significant snowfall of the season. And it started just moments before I got on this call. So outside my window, the woods are starting to change to all white, which is lovely and sweet. And as we were talking about before we started recording, climate change is changing the landscapes and the rhythms that we're used to from the places that we grew up. So I don't know how snowy and cold this winter will be. It's been really different the last few years since I moved back here after living away than what I remember. But it's sweet to feel the invitation to cocoon that the snow offers. My dog is inside and feeling a little needy because she's not usually she doesn't spend this much time inside. So I'm petting her to try and convince her to be quiet as we have this conversation. And after this call, I'm looking forward to just enjoying a cozy, quiet day. I love the way that the snow muffles all the sound. It's something that when I lived away, I lived in the tropics for about 10 years. And so didn't experience a winter for about that long. And I missed the quiet. I realized now that I've been living back here that the quiet of the snow is really nourishing. So, yeah.
That's what I was just about to say, that I miss the snow and having snow, but especially this quietude and silence that comes with the snow, where all the sounds are muffled and it's a silence that we can hear. It's tangible and it's giving a special quality. Plus the whiteness of the snow and the way it reflects light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely informs our whole system immediately.
It does. Yeah. And when there isn't snow in the winter, like where the times in the winter where there isn't snow, it does that reflection of the light is significant, and it's so dark here. We're in the northern hemisphere. It gets dark around 4:30 this time of year. But when there's snow, there's still a lot of light, especially when the moon is full. But when there's no snow, it's much darker. So I'm hoping that this snow stays. We'll see. We don't. It's really. I really don't know, but I'll love it for a while it's here, even if I get a little grumpy about some aspect of it sometimes.
But now that you've mentioned the moon, I read your bio now in the beginning, but there's also one sentence that you wrote in your bio that says that you have an inordinate amount of love for octopuses, the moon, and your extensive collection of anatomy books.
It's
So
true.
for me, that was funny that was like the second sentence in your bio.
I know. What's funny is that this is the first time that I ever wrote a book that was published by by a publisher, and so have been doing all these podcast interviews and talks and traveling all over. And when I wrote the bio, they were like, okay, write a bio, just a few hundred words. And I was like, sure, I'll just put a little something personal in it. And then have since been introduced with those three things all over. And it's sweet because it's all very true, but I didn't realize how often it would be talked about when I wrote it. But I do. I love all those three things. I'm fascinated by octopuses. I think that they are just so incredible. There's a book called Other Minds by Peter Godfrey Smith, where he's a philosopher, and he outlines how, because octopuses and humans you have to go way, 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 way back to find our common ancestor, like basically all the way back to the beginning. And yet there's a lot of consciousness that is developed in similar ways in the two species. And so it gives it a really interesting way to explore our own consciousness through this very, very, very distant relative, unlike, say, chimpanzees, for example, or dogs, or creatures that are more closely related to us. So sometimes when I just need to relax, I look at videos of octopuses. The moon is, it's this reminder of the cyclical nature of time, that it's not constant, it's changing. It's beautiful. And yeah, there's just something so sweet about this body of light that is constantly changing. And my anatomy book collection, I've been obsessed about anatomy for as long as I can remember. And then when I met my primary somatic teacher, Patty Townsend, she opened me up to this world of embodied yoga, is the form of yoga that she teaches, which is inspired by Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen's work, body mind centering. So that form of somatics is the idea that there is consciousness and felt presence in all the different layers of the body. And so I explore anatomy books because I find them endlessly fascinating. Yeah.
And by the way, Patty will be my following guest.
Oh, amazing. Oh, I love that so much.
In January, we just spoke a couple of days ago.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah. Can you reflect more about this meeting with her and how this practice of yoga that she teaches in an embodied way change your perception?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for you and all your listeners to get to be in conversation with her. You'll see, she's brilliant and engaging and funny and has so much depth. And that was what I found when I first found her. I had been doing yoga from an early age, but I grew up in the early 2000s. I was in my teens and early 20s, in the 90s, early 2000s, where, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, where at least in the United States, I don't know what it was like in Europe, but I'm guessing it was similar. The tabloids, the news, everything was just hyper focused on not only pointing out when women were even a little bit curvy, but calling women who had even the littlest bit of curve on their bodies disgusting, horrible, like nauseating, just awful, awful things. And I've talked to, I've been in conversation the last few weeks with a few friends that, now we're in our mid 40s, we're sort of navigating the midlife sort of change in our bodies, but also having to come to terms with what it meant to get indoctrinated into that mode of thinking when we were that age. So I was doing yoga for a long time, but it was something I felt like I should do because it would possibly bring my body under control. And then, but I never liked it. It just always felt like something I should do. And maybe this will finally, be the thing that brings my body under control. And it felt like a way that I could. It's also, a lot of Western yoga can hide that sort of desire for control in plain sight. Then I met Patty, And it was like a drink of water on a very hot day. Just so instantly nourishing and quenched a thirst that I didn't even have the words to articulate. Because, like I said, she's funny, she's incredibly smart. She's been doing this for, longer than I've been alive, or maybe just about the same time that I've been alive. Like, she started teaching yoga in California in the 80s. Like, it was part of the first wave of that. And then had met Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen, I think about 5 or 10 years before I met Patty. And so her work was deepening in that way that Bonnie has. Then when I met Bonnie, it was a whole other level, because if anyone is listening to this and is curious about somatics in this way, if you Google Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen or body mind centering, you'll find a plethora of, videos and courses. And she's in her mid 80s now and has just devoted her life to this deep exploration, and then inviting other people into that with her. And she does it without any hurry, without any rush, but just deep, patient inquiry. And I feel so fortunate in a world, the yoga world. I was there teaching yoga in the boom of it when it was like, this, I mean, there's still, it's hardly, faded into the background, but it used to be like this really big cultural force. And then there was a lot of controversy, right? There was the Bikram controversy and the Anusara controversy. And, just like, I felt like everyone I knew around me was having their teachers outed as horrible, manipulative, like truly flawed heroes. But I had this sort of haven of these two women who have been real and authentic and loving and kind, the whole way through. And I just feel so fortunate that has been my experience. So yeah, I could gush about Patty, and I do. If you've read my book, I mention her a lot. I mention Bonnie a lot. I wanted to make sure when I was sharing my work, which is different than their work, because that's the nature of this sort of thing, is that it grows and changes through the people that are exploring with it. But I wanted to make very clear that I am part of this lineage of both Patty and Bonnie. I joke with Patty that she's my somatic mom, and then so Bonnie's my somatic grandma, and someday I'll have a somatic baby of my own. And that's how we, guide this this learning. So I love both of them. I am so grateful to both of them.
Yeah, beautiful. And this honoring of the seed is kind of important. Like, what is the soil where we have been planted, and which made us into what we are today. And yes, this whole the chaos of the yoga world, which I have been observing as well in Europe, and importing style from the US. And I think that part of your work is also dedicated to discovering and pointing out these mainstream narratives, which kind of govern our lives. And a lot of times we take them for granted. And then somatics can provide a way out of it. But also a lot of these narratives, as you kind of mentioned before, gets camouflaged into all these things that we think are good for us, like yoga, like somatics, like wellness. But it's basically the same capitalist narratives, but camouflaged in a different rhetoric, let's say.
Yeah, definitely. I would say that somatics itself has become that. When I first started teaching somatics, no one knew what that word meant. I had to explain what it was, and now it's a buzzword, and it's used to sell everything, right? And I feel like a significant root is the individualism that both capitalism and colonialism requires. Capitalism in particular, right? Because I am, capitalism, markets and trade is not the problem. Capitalism, even itself, is not necessarily the problem, except that it takes any sort of barriers for unfettered growth off the table, and we're sort of expecting people to self-regulate. But the system rewards people who don't self-regulate. Like right now, it's just been announced that, or recently announced that Elon Musk will become the first trillionaire, right? There is no, and I was, to give people, it helps me to sort of grasp the scale. So 1,000,000 seconds is 11 years. 1,000,000,000 seconds is, I think, around 31 years. And 1,000,000,000,000 seconds is over 31,000 years. So there's no, like, the everything is vastly skewed and wildly off course if one person is able to amass that much wealth within a system that we all live within. And that system prioritizes the individual. And then you have things like yoga or somatics come into that system. And unfortunately, yoga, for example, was taken out of its cultural context, which is a very collective cultural context. That doesn't mean that, I don't mean to sound like a Westerner idealizing the Eastern culture. And we can't really have a clear conversation about Western yoga without understanding that it has been removed from its cultural framework and placed within the Western cultural framework, which says the individual should do whatever the individual needs to do, right? And so then you have Westerners taking the parts about the individualized practice of yoga or meditation, etc., forgetting the ways that the cultural context is holding us to something bigger than ourselves, which means that when you're in something bigger than ourselves, focusing on the individual is the radical choice. When we're in a system where we just focus on ourselves, focusing on ourselves is no longer the radical choice, right?
Okay.
So, and then there's just the way that capitalism and the way that social media now, which has been part of our cultural framework for long enough that it is the cultural framework, right? We can all complain about it, and I do, about the way that it prioritizes sound bites and flattens discourse, but it has become baked into our culture. And in the culture that has grown around social media, in the social framework that social media creates, one of the reasons I was so adamant that I always bring up my teachers is because of the ways that sort of social media framework says, it's just me. I just created this thing, right? If I credit someone, it's in the tiniest print in the very bottom corner, buried on the 5th page or something, right? Rather than saying, these are the people I've learned from. This is who I owe my history to, so that I can come to you in the present moment. That is, for me, an essential part of separating out from this thing that says, I'm the only one that has this, that does this, that can offer this to you. And if you just buy it from me, you'll get it too. It never sits right with me, even though I do sell my stuff. I trademark my stuff because I have to, because not doing it is actually dangerous, right? It's very complicated and nuanced, but that's one of the reasons why I want to always talk about it, because we can't see it. It's just so in us, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned in your book, in the beginning, an author that I recently just found and read a couple of her books, and you call her a writer and a prophet, Octavia Butler. Can you talk a little bit about her? Because recently I read the books, Parables of the Talents and
the Sower.
And the Sower, exactly. And it seemed very prophetic.
Yeah. Well, did you note the part where she talks about a fundamentalist president who ran on the slogan, "Make America Great Again"? I mean, that's one example of how, I do think that she was seeing things. She wrote about LA being on fire in the same year that LA was on fire. She also has written, I mean, I'm not an Octavia Butler scholar. There are Octavia Butler scholars out there. Toshi Regan, Adrienne Murray Brown, Alexis Pauline Gumbs, Walida E. Marisha. These are all Black women who are, or Black people who are, dedicated scholars of her work.
Mm.
I'm just a fan. But I do think that it's striking to note how Butler essentially just questioned what would happen if things that she was seeing went unchecked, and then explored the world from that perspective, and how she grapples with ideas around identity, community, selfhood, belonging. Yeah, if people haven't read her books, I don't know what you're waiting for.
Right. And the other author is also Ursula K. Le Guin.
Exactly. Similar thing,
Yeah.
similar way of using science fiction to explore ideas, a similar way of using science fiction to explore ideas of what will happen if these things continue to happen. And in Le Guin's world, she's exploring things around gender and what it means to be human. And I mean, Butler's work also does this. But yeah, those two writers, I feel like, just exemplify what it means to use fiction as a portal rather than an escape, but a looking glass into the future.
So going back a little bit to this topic of a certain field of knowledge getting pulled out of its original context,
Mm-hmm.
and then having a life of its own and developing into a myriad of forms.
Yeah.
Like we said, happened to yoga, and I also noticed happened to the practices of shamanism.
Yes.
And I think somatics is the new wave,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
it also we can say that it originates in the West in a way.
Yes and no, right? Somatics does, the word I think somatics does, but somatics as a practice is always tied into indigenous practices. So, but
Right.
then the framework of it and a lot of the main players that have, made the term mean what it means today are Western figures. So somatics is tricky because yoga always maintained with clarity its ties to the East, right? In a sort of Disneyfication of Eastern culture. But it's very clear. I think people are aware, just even the word is obviously not an English word, even though it's become very much part of the English zeitgeist. Somatics is different because a lot of people, and I include myself in this, use Western science to support their inquiry into these forms of thought that might more easily align themselves with Eastern forms of thought. It's really amazing to see how Western science is coming to similar conclusions as mystics and shamans have come to. But it gets really sort of fuzzy and murky, especially because of this sort of this hyper claiming of this is mine, and this oversimplification and this parroting that happens because of social media, where now somatics starts to feel like it's only talking about the nervous system and about regulating the nervous system, right? And people will use these really complicated words and refer to studies and all these things that makes it sound very grounded in something, but it's actually often, unfortunately, not. Yeah, so somatics is a tricky one.
Yeah, and I noticed this tendency to simplify our human body and condition into the nervous system.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it
Whereas just the
interesting?
word soma, if we take it as a whole body, as a unity, and then just reduce it to the nervous system,
Right.
it's a very peculiar thing.
It is. Yeah. My personal definition of somatics is that it's the whole body relating to the whole earth body that the individual body is a part of. Because my individual body, even that first question that you asked is a brilliant example of this. Right now, we were talking about that quiet and the way that, the snow instantly has this effect on us, right? Where there's this sort of burrowing quiet that just comes because the whole of my body is in constant relationship with the whole of the environment that I'm a part of. And even something like COVID, for example, really exemplified how that whole of my environment is actually much, much, much bigger than I see, especially because of the globalization of trade routes, et cetera. I am in almost constant communication, seen and unseen, with a myriad of different factors around me. And then my own body is made of both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. I'm an ecosystem within an ecosystem. But then somatics in the mainstream seems to talk about just the nervous system, and more importantly, regulating the nervous system, which is a word that to me just feels like fingernails on a chalkboard. Because why are we so constantly focused on trying to regulate rather than habitate, right? Like actually live within rather than constantly control. It kind of feeds back to what I struggled with in my early 20s, which was this idea that, and it's, to be totally honest, like I'm a woman in her 40s. I still struggle with this idea that a good body is a controlled body, right? I have it under control. And for women, that is typically small, right? Smaller, smaller, smaller. Even now, like we had a few years of this really luxurious embracing of curves, and now, my friends and I are in conversation about noticing the frightening shift back again to skinny, controlled, and what that means as a culture that we're prioritizing that once again. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the control of and narrowing it down to just one singular part, the nervous system, rather than understanding that the nervous system is, it's like the mycelia through the forest floor. You can't just take it out and expect it to, it's necessary, but it's not you can't isolate it, right? But it's a quick sell. It's it grabs people's attention. Regulate your nervous system is now just this sort of buzzword phrase that you can Google and find endless blog posts and TikTok videos, etc. about. But what are we actually saying when we say we want to regulate the nervous system?
Exactly. Well, what does it mean?
To me, it means this is where it also becomes important to recognize the ways that somatics is tied into capitalism, because the somatics industry, the wellness and embodiment industry, is now $1 trillion industry. Like there's Elon Musk, the trillionaire, but there's also the industry that my work is a part of, which is $1 trillion industry. If it's so tied into capitalism, we have to accept that the capitalist ideals are influencing it, which again, markets and trades aren't the issue. It's the individual. And not all capitalists are a problem. I can even, I can feel my uncle, who's a self-avowed capitalist, listens to my podcast interviews. I can feel him here in the future being like, it's not what I've told you about. Like, there are people who use the power that capitalism generates for good, but it's self-imposed boundaries. It is not inherent in the system. A system that rewards unfettered growth means that the individual always has this push towards taking more, consuming more, generating more, hoarding more. If somatics has become $1 trillion industry, it is now deeply ingrained into the capitalist, framework, which means that control of the nervous system, regulating the nervous system, will be formatted towards the body that can produce more, because capitalism requires production, right? So it's calm. There's even an app called the Calm app, which last I checked was like $1 billion app. Headspace. these apps, these practices, if you look at, what people are selling is these 5 steps to regulate your nervous system. It's how do you maintain calm productivity within a system that is literally destroying the very fabric of life that we depend upon. How do you stay calm while that's happening? Which is different than how do I remain grounded and in connection while this is happening. That's not the calm that's getting sold to us. The calm that's getting sold to us is how do I keep on filling out spreadsheets while this is happening, right? Which is a very different thing. So I think that's what mainstream somatics is honestly selling, along with a thinner body, because that's the product that gets sold, and more money, and better sex life, and a more functional business. These are all things that I've seen somatics be sold as, and it's why are we going towards that? What could we go towards instead is a question that guides me.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say? Where could we go with it?
Well, I think that's where dividing the definition of calm productivity from an ability to remain grounded and in connection with myself, with the actual earth around me and beneath me and within me, and with others, which is sometimes calm, is sometimes not calm, right? Like, I don't want to only be friends with people. I don't want all my friendships to always be calm all the time. Sometimes I want to have, like riotous laughter and, big joyful dance parties. And I also know that in my most intimate relationships, sometimes we're not going to be always calm with each other. Sometimes we're going to be frustrated with each other. We're going to be like even angry with each other. But there is a difference in that frustration and that anger when there's a grounded connection, at least with myself, even if the relationship ends up severing. If there's a grounded connection with myself, it's not calm in the sense of even-keeled tone of voice all the time, Stepford wife style, but there is a connectedness to it, right? And that's where somatics has a lot to offer. It's not all about the mind trying to figure things out. It's about settling into the back of your own body, settling back into your own space, actually being in the seat that you occupy or the space that you are in fully, rather than out there in front trying to get ahead of the issue. Somatics offers that if we're going there, but it's like a mirror world where that can look like I'm trying to be calm, but in my actual relationships, in my actual body, it doesn't feel like that at all. I don't want to be calm. I want to have calm as one of the options, right?
Right. And it seems to me like that one way is almost a denial of life and building a facade.
Yes.
And the other is just becoming more alive and more encompassing to the variety of
Yes.
everything that we are.
I think that's a perfect way to say that. Yes.
Yeah. And this brings me to your should I say program framework?
Yeah. Growl.
Growl.
Yeah.
Because it's these two things for me when I'm listening this, like one is this growth,
Mm-hmm.
but this organic growth that we are capable as human beings, and just to know ourselves better, and by that we kind of amplify our space and grow. But this growl is also definitely not being calm, but
Mm-hmm.
becoming more inhabited in our tissues, even in the animal parts of
Yeah. In the
ourselves.
ferocity required to actually commit to life, right? That this is not passive, that we're active participants in this. It takes some claws sometimes. But grow and growl, it's an acronym. It's ground, G, relate, R, observe, and then widen, And at first it was just that, but then as I was working this is the beautiful thing about taking on a project like writing a book, is that you don't really know where you're going to arrive when you start. And so I thought that when I was first approached by the publisher to write the book that became Returning Home to Our Bodies, at first I thought that it would be just a collection of essays. And then as I wrote the book, I realized that there was this, it was like looking into a lake and the water started to settle so I could see the bottom. And at the bottom was this framework. Grow was what it started as. And then, in no small part, thanks to long walks with Patty, talking about like what this could mean and what kind of language it could take. But then, as I was working on it in that form, I realized, well, what is any of this if not love? And then, if you add love in, it becomes growl. And at first, one of my editors was like, "Oh, I don't know, that might be a little cheesy." But thankfully, they switched their tune as they saw it coming into its full form, because I was like, no, I don't think this book or this method can be what it needs to be if we don't bring the ferocity in and also show how love isn't a passive word. There is so much calm in deep love, and there's some ferocity there, because sometimes you have to really work at staying tethered to love when, societal and historical and just, like personal wounds are coming in, trying to rip you away from that place, right? The current of the stream is definitely not pushing us towards love. It's pushing us towards despair, towards isolation, towards towards blame and othering and competition. And so it takes some ferocity to swim against the current and say, no, I'm committed to being in love with myself, with others, with the world. And for me, having a method, having a method that has an acronym is helpful, because when those storms come, at the very least, if all I can remember is the first step, which is ground, that is it's the primary relationship that my body has with the force of gravity and with the ground underneath me. If all I do is remember to just be a little heavier, just drop a little bit more into my actual physical weighted body, then from there I can move on to the more complicated thing of being in relationship and remembering that I'm always in relationship, even just in my own physical body, because I'm a multicellular organism. And then from there, I can observe what's actually happening, but observe from a relational place, not from trying to step back and just be in this like cool, collected, observational, but be like, oh no, I'm in relationship and I'm observing from here. Widen out to take it all in, to take it all in, not just my own personal experience, but to take in the whole that I'm a part of. And all of that is, to me, what it means to love as a practice, not just as a throwaway word that we say.
Beautiful. And also the essence that kind of from where everything emanates.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What is any of this if it's not love? And love's not cute and it's not Hallmark worthy. Definitely not all the time. Love is a force, right? It's the force that holds our cells together. It's the force that like weaves the tightness of our tendons. Love is what keeps the roots going down and the limbs going up. There's a force to it, right?
And we definitely need to use this force to decondition ourselves and to cut all the ties of conditioning that we have been pulling, and just to carve our own way and our own garden in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is too easy to just critique and wave our arms up and say, "Oh, it's just all terrible. What's even the point?" Right? Again, there comes that ferocity where it's like, no, there is a point. This is any step I take away from that current of despair, the drive to just consume, the isolation, any movement I take away from that brings me closer towards the that power of love. And so I'm not just doing this alone. I'm doing this to return to something that my body knows. And that keeps me going when it feels hopeless and impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, the most powerful experiences through somatic work was always this reconnection with something that I felt was natural for me,
Mm-hmm.
like something that was already there. So it was always like a moment of remembering and uncovering
Yes.
instead of
Yeah.
having something from the outside. It was always this return to self, but to something that has always been there, with this feeling almost at certain times, like, how could I ever forgotten this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's just it. It's a remembering, it's a returning. It's not a discovering in the sense of something new. It's something that is happening. And then the beauty of it is that consciousness, attention, it increases, right? So if I give my attention to the breath, not to try and control it, but just to give my attention to the breath, and listeners, you could try this as we're talking about it, right? If you just give your attention to it and say, okay, I'm breathing now, the breath will change. It's not being changed. You're not saying, I'm going to now breathe more deeply. I mean, that could be the pattern. You have to watch for that. But just turning your attention to the breath and giving yourself some time to breathe as the body wishes to breathe, the breath will change. Consciousness, attention does that. So it's not, sometimes it is actual things that we do, right? Like skills and techniques that we learn and that we do. But even that, it's not this external thing because it's all happening within. And much of it, especially in the work that Bonnie has created for these last 50 years, that Patty teaches, that I teach, especially in these practices, it's about bringing our conscious awareness to what is already happening and letting that conscious awareness increase the sensation of what is happening. And then there's choice there because I'm aware of what's happening, which is really different than I have to go get this thing so that I can have this thing to do this thing.
Right. And one of recent Bonnie's lectures was called Awareness as a Motor Act.
Hmm. I haven't seen that one, but I can imagine what she talked about.
This is how I understood this title, like that just bringing awareness, consciousness anywhere. It's a movement.
Hmm.
It's a process that starts changing and being different just because we brought our consciousness there. It's different than when it's in the dark, when it's
Yeah.
not conscious.
Yeah. So much changes when we just bring awareness as a action to something, right? A lot of the work of healing is really bringing our awareness to something, letting it sit within our awareness, not to immediately change it, but to just let it be where it is. Hopefully, ideally, have someone else also witness it where we can be seen. And then profound healing is possible without having to effort, without having to work at it so much, right? There's something profound that happens when we just move our attention to a place and let it rest there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, I've noticed in your work that you're very conscious of language.
Yeah.
So for me, that is also a way that we bring consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
because we use these terms without even thinking about it. And
Mm-hmm.
when we actually bring consciousness and start picking them apart, we can see a lot and realize a lot about the culture that produced this language.
Yeah.
So we were talking about regulating the nervous system, or you mentioned the rib cage, breath work, words that we basically take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
imply a certain mind state.
They sure do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of that comes from being bilingual and having lived in primarily in my second language for a long time. Maybe you can relate to this. There's a slowing down that's required when you're not in your native language anymore, and you have to sort of. I remember my memory got so much better when I was, you know, I was like, oh, I remember the details of that anyone ever says to me because I have to give them my full attention. I can't be just sort of half listening if I want to really follow what you're saying, which for better or worse is not true in English because I grew up speaking it. So living in my second language for so long and, being confused by idioms in a way that I just take for granted in English. Like I remember a friend from Rwanda, he was just like, what does it mean when someone says that they're down to do something? And without thinking, I was like, oh, it means that they're up to do it. And he was just like,
So,
what? What does that mean, right? So having conversations too with friends who live in English as their second language, it sparked a sort of playfulness within that because I don't want to sound like I'm getting so precious about it. But there is something potent about considering what words we use and also considering how the words that we use so often become stripped of their meaning. I remember when I was teaching yoga, back in my 30s, I was teaching, many classes a week. And maybe if anyone here is listening who's done that, you can relate to the feeling of just getting really tired of the sound of my own voice and feeling the sort of like drone that would, on days that I was tired, just sort of set in where I would just kind of say things and then realize halfway through the phrase that I had said the phrase, right? And wanting to snap myself out of that because that's not the kind of experience I wanted to offer people. So in thinking about that, that led me to think about, okay, well, what is it that I'm actually trying to offer? And this is also something that in Patty's yoga trainings, we would have long conversations. What words, what verbs, what adjectives, what nouns bring people into their body without you having to say, okay, now we're going to talk about the mineral bone. But things like, strong, compact, driving, push, these kinds of words bring you there without needing to get sort of, uncomfortably dragged along compared to say flow, pour, soft, rest. That's all fluid body words and language. So just in the way that I speak can bring you and me more into a certain consciousness of the body. And in this sort of, high speed social media world, I think it's all the more important to pause and consider what words are being stripped of their meaning through constant repetition and how we might either choose a different word or peel the words apart to infuse meaning back into them. And breath work is one that, I recently went on a bit of a rant for a few weeks on my social media platforms about it because I was like, why are we making even the breath into work? Why is everything work?
right. Yeah. And I see also here an opportunity for the storytelling to come in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The potency of storytelling to nourish us and to give us a different perspective of our body and to awaken our body through different metaphors, images, connections with the natural world.
Yeah. Language is one of the constant human arts. Everyone uses language, whether or not everyone gives attention to language or uses language in a way that we would find beautiful is, that doesn't negate it. Language is an art form that we constantly are involved in. And humans are story creatures. We learn through story, we share through story, we create community through story. So the stories that we tell ourselves about the body, the natural world, our own self, they influence how we see and understand the world. So why not play with that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and now when you were speaking, I thought about Croatian language,
Yeah, tell me.
and,
I don't
and
speak
I
any.
actually realized that we use the word for the lung lobe. We
Mm.
say plućno krilo, which means the lung wing.
Oh, oh,
So
that's so pretty.
the lung is actually a wing in Croatian.
So when you refer to your lungs, you are technically saying the lung wing.
If we say the left, right wing,
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, I love that.
yeah,
That's so much more poetic than lobe. I don't know what lobe. I like the sound of it, but I don't know what it means or comes from.
yeah,
I'll have to look up the
exactly.
etymology, but calling it a wing is so much more inviting.
Yeah, because in a way they are the wings when they spread.
Yeah, they are, and they bring a buoyancy to the body because they fill with air, and then the chest is more open, and it makes it all the more sad and ridiculous that we would then refer to the wings of the lungs being held within the rib cage. That's very sad.
Right,
That's very,
right,
it
right.
already it paints a picture that I don't want to live in. Versus, Patty calls it the thoracic cathedral is the word that she uses, and I'm sure you two can have a really great conversation about this. But it's like there's so many movable joints, there's so much space, there's room for wings, and it's really lovely to think of having wings that expand and condense as we breathe.
Mhm.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah. And in a way, it's a way of finding a sense of wonder and awe in
Yes.
the ordinary, quotation marks ordinary, because
Yes. I feel like that, like awe and wonder are the antidote to the despair and isolation and just sort of flatness that is pushed upon us. So yeah, and it a phrase that my publisher pulled out from Returning Home to Our Bodies for the marketing, and I was so grateful that they did, is that awe and curiosity create possibilities.
mm,
So they made stickers, they made it as part of the marketing swag. And I was like, oh, yeah, yes. Thank you for pulling that one sentence out. It's totally true that it instantly takes us out of the sort of just hyper focus. I have to get this done and figure this one thing out into what could be here, right? There's a playfulness that's invited when we're in a state of awe and wonder. It's why, it's like kids are so good at it when you really get them playing. And if they haven't been totally indoctrinated into screens and toys that dictate play, but if a kid in the woods, which is why I dedicated the book to my goddaughter Kaoba, who is so good at that, just can make intricate worlds, or at least now she's getting a little older, so she'd roll her eyes if she heard me say this, but when she was little, could create intricate worlds of just out of anything, right?
right, right. And this is so, like, now when I was thinking, if I was to explain to somebody what would be the benefits of the somatic work,
Mm,
would be this awe and curiosity,
yeah.
and for me this is so powerful. And why are we not pushing these elements instead of regulation of the nervous system? just
Right?
just by saying it and comparing it, you see how one is super magical and so much things are happening there, and the other is kind of flat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I know exactly which door I'm opening if it's labeled, like this way to awe
Yeah,
and curiosity, this way to a regulated nervous system. Like, no,
yeah,
thank you.
exactly.
Yeah, take me to the magic, right? Which doesn't mean that I don't have bad days or times when I have to sit myself down and be like, okay, you've been walking around the house with one slipper on because you're just too fragmented to actually focus on anything. There are skills and tricks and tools that can be helpful to like kind of come back to a whole place when feeling really fragmented. But that too is not regulating the nervous system. It's a return to sort of gathering up all the dust motes of myself and bringing them back into one coalesced
Mm.
being, right? So I can focus on, you know, doing whatever I need to do, including sometimes filling out spreadsheets. Sometimes we just have to do that stuff, but from a place of curiosity and play rather than, yeah, regulation.
Mhm. And this bringing and coalescing of our fragments into a whole, it's also magical.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it feels much better, especially as someone, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was younger. I could take medication for it, but I don't like how it makes me think. And so there are times when I'm literally walking around the house with like one shoe on because I've just like in the midst of putting on my shoes, I realized that I needed to do something and you know, and the shame that I could place upon myself would get me back into regulation mode, right? Like, what are you doing? Get yourself together. Like, put your other shoe on, right? But if instead I pause and remember, and I have to constantly work at this, but if I instead pause and remember and be like, okay, like, bring all your little magic dust back into, like, get your other shoe on, and then we'll go on the adventure with two shoes on, right? It's, there's so much more gentleness there rather than, or you lost your keys again. It's just like, okay, now we have to go on a scavenger hunt for your keys because you didn't put them in the spot where you always put them or where you're supposed to always put them, right? It feels so much better in my entire soma, not just my nervous system, to stay in a sense of playfulness rather than the shame that regulation pushes me towards because I'm dysregulated. And in order to regulate, shame comes in and tries to control, right? Shame is a powerful control tactic.
Right. Right. Mm. And you describe yourself in one sentence as a poet with a firm belief in magic and mystery.
Yeah.
What is your
Yeah.
relationship with magic?
Gosh, what's my relationship with magic? That's such a good question. I think magic at its most fundamental is an aligning of oneself with the sort of possibilities of the cosmos. It's not so much about, like trying to force the world to do what I want, which is what a lot of, again, like if I'm going to go on a rant about what is often marketed as magical, it's about, kind of trying to manipulate
Right.
situations to get what you want, right? Rather than opening oneself to possibilities, but with a clarity of mind and desire that then in opening oneself to the possibilities, but having a clarity of where one wants to go, you become like a sailboat, right? The sailor on a sailboat doesn't just put up the sail and let the wind take him where he wants. There's control there, but it's a control that has to remain open to what the outer environment is offering. That to me is magic, is emptying myself of a need to control, but remaining aware of the need to maintain. Actually, here I wanted to use control again. Control is one of those words that has multiple meanings, right? There's the control, like tight, white knuckled, I'm going to make everything how I want it. And then there's the control,
Very.
like a surfer can control the board. There's skill and there's tight need, right? So, can I hold the openness to what will happen while utilizing the skills to maneuver, to navigate without trying to make everything fit the tight, regimented boxes that I want, that I've decided are the best choice? I hope that made sense.
Yes. Yes, you said this beautifully. And for me, this also marketed idea of manifestation
Mm-hmm.
was something was off for me immediately because again, it's taking us out of our own authentic selves and
Mm-hmm.
kind of creating our own life. Not everything is meant for us to be manifested.
Mm-hmm.
And if the majority of our desires comes from a conditioned mind anyways, to get more money, to get the perfect partner, to be healthy, nothing is wrong with that. But
Yeah.
we're speaking about manifestation. Everybody will manifest these three things. Give me
Yeah.
health, give me money, give me partner.
Yeah, exactly. In addition to somatics, my other sort of life's focus is the tarot.
Yeah.
I even created a tarot deck called the Somatic Tarot. And a joke amongst astrologers and tarot readers is that everyone comes in wanting to know when they're going to get laid and when they're going to get paid. That's what the primary question. Yeah. And in the tarot, so one of the things I love about the tarot is that it's 78 cards. Of that, 22 are these primal archetypes of the major arcana. And it tells a story from 0 to 22, the fool through the world. And it tells a story that of the soul kind of growing and navigating both destruction and expansion. And in the sort of middle of that story, there's a card called the Temperance card, which is associated with Sagittarius season, which is the season we're in right now astrologically. So this is a good time to tell this story. The Temperance card, some people describe it as, temperance is in like, not drinking or not indulging and all these things. The story that resonates the most for me and that I feel the strongest in my own art as a reader is that the Temperance card is actually an invitation to get really quiet and to listen down underneath whatever it is that we do desire for if there is a seed of fear there or a seed of hope there. So, for example, if I'm very happily partnered, but when I was single, if I was wishing for a partner, the work of temperance would be to sift underneath the layers to see, am I wishing for a partner because I'm afraid of being single and what it would mean to be alone? Or am I wishing for a partner because I'm excited about the possibility of growing in that way where there's someone that is really wanting to grow our lives together, that wants to see me and that I want to see.
Completely different.
It, completely different. The resonance of how I would approach dating would be different. The resonance of how I would approach being single will be different. If on a different level, money, if I want to make more money, do I want to make more money because I'm afraid of what being poor would mean? Which is valid because, especially in the States where like one trip to the hospital can bankrupt you, it's valid to be afraid of not having money, right? But am I wanting to have money because I'm afraid of not having money or because I want to have enough that I can comfortably share and comfortably meet life's challenges as they come? Again, resonance is totally different, both in how I approach trying to make money, how I tend to my own money, all of it is very different. So that quiet, deep listening that lets us get underneath what it is that we have said that we desire to make sure that we're planting a seed of hope rather than a seed of fear. Because most people I find are very cued into what we don't want. It takes some effort to get to what we do want. But that effort, it changes things. That to me, to go back to your other question, is magic. To be really clear about what we want, not from a place of fear, but from a place of hope. Because you might not get what you want, but at least if you are in a place of hope, you do kind of get what you want almost immediately because you start to live into where you already have it versus the fear, which takes you away from, puts you in a place of, I don't have it, I don't have it, I don't have it.
Right. Right. And it reminds me of this BMC term going under the tone,
Yep.
just descending
Yeah.
into this basic vibration again, so to see from which vibration is my desire bubbling.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes,
it is also a very, I would say, not a radical process, but it demands utmost honesty, right?
it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that it would be odd not to find some fear there, right? You're likely going to find, even if you don't find the fear there, you probably haven't dug in quite deep enough. And if you don't find the fear then you'll find it later. The fears come, right? You'll get the partner and then you'll be afraid of losing them.
Mhm.
It's, are you afraid of losing
That's
them
right.
because you're afraid of what that, like, where is it? And it's not to just be in the mind, it's just to have that radical presence and honesty so that we're not controlled and manipulated by what we're not willing to look at, right? Attention and consciousness enlivens, but anything that we're not willing to look at, it enlivens in a twisted way because now I'm putting in some form or another, I'm putting energy into not giving it my attention instead of there it is. And yeah, I'm afraid of it, but I'm not going to let that fear dictate how I engage with the world.
Mhm. Um, I would like to speak a little bit more about tarot. I'm no
Yeah,
expert in tarot, but years ago I found the work of Alejandro Jodorowsky,
I love him.
and I found a series of his tarot readings on YouTube. And
Mm.
for me, that was amazing. He was doing readings to the people who funded his movie,
Oh, how wonderful.
and he would just pull three cards and start storytelling from this
Mm.
card.
Hmm.
And it was amazing. And then I ordered that particular tarot deck. It's Tarot de Marseille.
Hmm.
And I've been experimenting with it on my own. And for me, it was a very embodied experience when I would
Yeah.
just focus and drop into my body and then observe the symbolism and of the archetypes. It
Hmm.
would start different processes within me, and also a
Yeah.
story would be formed in depending which cards are aligned.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your love for tarot and also why you chose to redesign your deck and kind of break the old form. And
Mm. I love that. I love that you brought up his readings. I'm going to go look for them. I'm actually about to start every transition into the new year for the last 5 years. I've offered the people can get a New Year's tarot reading from me, and I just put those on sale and now have like 36 to do. So that for the next few weeks, that's going to be my main focus is doing exactly that, pulling three cards and telling a story for someone that I know very little about.
mm,
I also do like more in-depth readings where, we talk about like it's one-on-one and we're talking about more things, but there's something really potent about these three card readings that bring a story out from these archetypes. I first was introduced to the tarot by my aunt back when I was, I think, like 13. And in fact, like when she passed, I received a number of her decks. And so the Thoth deck. So for people who don't know tarot, there are a few different. One is no one really knows exactly how this got started, but there's some theories. And one of them is that it was a playing card game that sort of became divinatory. And divination is it is this sort of inherent human desire and or quality. Just even look at how kids will say like, in the States, there's don't step on a crack or you'll break your mother's back, right? Flipping a coin to decide what to do. 1111, making a wish, all these different things that we do, or like, wishing on a fallen eyelash. These are all little forays into divination. The tarot is a set of 78 cards, the major and minor arcana, and they tell, like I was saying, they tell a story. Jodorowsky was a sort of this, he really helped to break the tarot out of just sort of games and parlor tricks into more like philosophy and archetypes. He's not alone. Jung also did it, but Jodorowsky, I've loved his work ever since I first picked up the book, The Way of the Tarot. I don't even know how many years ago. So then it was in 2018. I was living in Mexico in a little, like, a tiny little open air cabin in the middle of the jungle. And I kept on waking up at like 3 a.m. with this voice in my head saying, make a tarot deck and call it the somatic tarot. And for weeks, I was like, I would just push it away and be like, no, I'm just going to, like, leave me alone. I'm going back to bed. I don't know the tarot. I don't know the tarot enough to make a tarot deck. But then it just kept on happening. It kept on happening. And finally I was like, all right, fine. Like, I'll get up and I'll do it. And so I started working on the minor arcana, the major arcana, starting with the Fool. And I would make, since I was living deep in the jungle, I had my computer. I didn't have a lot of other art supplies. So I started just making digital collages. And I'm still teaching a ongoing somatic community called Anchor Community. And I started sharing it with them. I'd make it. I'd write an essay and make the art, and shared it with them, and they all loved it, and were asking for more. So I kept on doing it. And then when I finished the 22 archetypes of the major arcana, I put out like a post on my Instagram that I think I had 1,000 followers on, saying, I made this tarot deck. Does anyone want to try it out? And sold like 60 copies to people who I didn't follow. It just kind of sort of took off. And then, so I did just the major arcana. And then honestly, I still was like, I can't take on the whole 78 cards. That's too much. And then COVID happened, and I was in the middle of the jungle, recently heartbroken, just sort of navigating, like just being really by myself and not really knowing what to do. So I worked on the tarot. And once I finished the whole deck, again, it was just sort of like I put out a post saying I had this tarot deck, and hundreds of orders came in, and then more and then more. And it's currently out of print because it just felt like it needed, again, I was just kind of listening to the deck and letting it sort of want to go into a rest for a while to see what happens next. But as part of making a deck, I started, giving more readings. And then I've taught 2 year-long programs called Luminous, where we go into the archetypes in depth for a year. I'm rethinking how I want to do it for the next round, because I do want to do it again, but I'm just not sure how. But what is so beautiful about the tarot to me is that it's this endless source of story that comes from one story. The tarot cards themselves tell a story. All the cards together, they're in conversation with the other cards. If you know that story, then when you lay down 3 cards, it's not just those 3 cards that are on the table. It's also the cards that those 3 cards are in conversation with, right? And it just, to me, is, as a storyteller, as a person who loves language and art and poetry, it never ceases to amaze me how beautiful these stories are. And especially with these readings that I'm about to go and do so many of as the year turns into 2026, I don't know anything about these people. They fill out a couple questions. That's all I really know. Maybe I know them, but for the most part, I don't know them. And I'll get these emails back saying, just like, that spoke to me in such a deep way. I don't know how much of it is just humans' ability to make meaning from stories, or how much of it is just like that these cards are truly alive, and the tarot is it's a way to touch into something in the sort of more than there. It's like a way of translating sort of the cosmic dust into a form that we can easily recognize. But I'm endlessly enthralled by it. So I feel really fortunate that I get to have something that entices me so much into that story. And it, the tarot is so vast, 78 cards, that any human condition is represented by at least a combination of the cards, which also means that when I find myself at a loss for what to do, the tarot has a story for me. So, yeah. But to break from the tradition, I think it's a good thing that I was sort of like removed and in my own world to do it, because then it started to, if I had thought about it too much, and actually one of the reasons that I resisted when that little voice was saying to do it is that, who am I to say that I have anything better to offer than these decks that mean so much, right? But there was also something about taking away the kings and the queens and the sort of aristocracy from the images and re-envisioning it into sort of, just natural image, shape, color, and sort of letting it become more of a somatic feeling rather than these images that would create a story of another person, but let it sort of resonate into the soma of the reader. So that's why I did the deck, and I feel so grateful that I get to spend this much time with this deck that feels so alive.
Beautiful, and it is alive. I feel when you make a project like that it's almost like channeled.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it feels more like I feel very grateful that whatever wanted to come through chose me to go through. And it's this interesting thing. I felt this way with my book also, where there's this any significant creative project, there's a bit of a tension there because it's very much mine. I very much, sacrificed the pound of flesh and the blood and the tears to create it. And I also take responsibility for it in a way that, if someone doesn't like, it's not like I'm there to sort of cater to people, but there's also like a responsibility that you take when you create something and put it out into the world. And while it's very much mine, it's also not mine. There's a tension there that I think anyone that's created something, not even necessarily that's gone into large scale production, but when you create something, I think that you touch into that. Or if I'm not a parent, but I've talked to parents, that there's a similar sort of feeling to your kids where it's like, you're very much mine. I created you and you're also your own, right? And finding that balance is an essential part of it.
And in your tarot, what are the re-envisioned arcanas?
Oh, so there's the minor and major arcana are the same. And I kept the major arcana basically the same. The only thing that I changed is instead of the world card at the end, I renamed it the multiverse. And I think that's the only big change. And then I didn't change any of the other names. But then the four suits of the minor arcana,
Yeah.
instead of cups, swords, wands, and pentacles, it's cups became water, swords became air, wands became fire, and pentacles became earth.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm not the only one that's re-envisioned the suits into that lineup of elements. And some people have changed the suits into the four elements, but named them differently. What I found when I did a bit of research is that usually the cups do become water because it's the suit of emotions, and the pentacles do become ground or earth because it's the suit of material possessions. But sometimes swords, people decide to name that as fire, and wands, people decide to name that as air. But the sword suit deals with the mind, and mind felt like is a very much like an air quality to me. And the wand suit is the spirit, and spirit has a very fiery quality to me. So that's why I went with those four.
And
I renamed the kings and queens too. So they're creators, oracles, luminaries, and heroes rather than kings and queens and knights and pages.
yeah, that's what I'm about to ask. So heroes, luminaries, oracles, and creators.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we've come to an end.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is such a lovely conversation.
I want to thank you for all your work
Thank you.
and that you bring it out in such rich diversity, and for your voice on social media as well.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think it's important work that you're doing, and your voice is important. And what I really appreciate is that it's so authentic, and that you honor the influences from which this work sprouted, but you didn't box yourself in any kind of label. No, you're not part of, which is often in somatics. I am Feldenkrais. This is BMC. This is this. This it's like little communities which are closed. But I feel your work is deeply authentic, and yeah, it's just you carving your way, and it's very inspiring. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. That really means a lot. And I really appreciate being seen by you. Thank you. Yeah. And thank you so much for the invitation. This has been a pleasure. It's been something, I mean, I think you reached out for the first time in the summer. So it's been something I've been looking forward to for a while. And I'm thrilled that you're going to talk to Patty next. So that's just wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.